Good afternoon, family, or perhaps grand rising or good evening, depending where in the world you are watching this live stream. My name is Angela Asantiamal. We are streaming to you live from Ghana on the United States of Africa and the Power to Our Mothers Foundation Facebook pages. We're also streaming live from the United States of Africa YouTube channel. So if you are there, please do take a few seconds to subscribe to that channel. So welcome back. If you are coming back, welcome back. If you're here for the first time today, this is the second in a series, a new series that we have started looking at female genital mutilation and its harmful effects. Last week was very interesting and very packed. We did say we have so much to let you know of in this show, and I am very honored to be surrounded by some amazing queens that have a lot of knowledge. A few of them will be joining us. We are on the platform now with Queen Najar Nakio, who is a land activist, environmentalist, and an advocate for African men, men with wombs. That is us. And so, welcome, Queen Najar, to today's show.
Thank you so much, Queen Angela. Grand rising to everybody. Greetings wherever you're coming from. I give thanks to you, Angela Asante, for this platform. And I also give thanks to Daniel, our president of GPAN, and for this whole platform. It's wonderful. Can you hear me?
Can hear you. Yes, can hear you perfectly well.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
So that was a thank you to Daniel Mombwanu, who's the founder and president of Global Pan-Africanism Network, whose brainchild or vision is the United States of Africa, and
Yes.
me representing. And so Queen Najar and I are here representing GPAN Queens Club, which is specifically focused on looking at any and every issue relating to women. So that is why we're here. I also wear the hat of founding member of Power to Our Mothers Foundation Africa, again, which is focused on all things to do with empowering our mothers and mother figures, also known as women. So welcome to today's show. Now, if you have seen any of the posts relating to today's show, you would have seen that it was recommended that you bring a pen and notepad, because there's a lot of information that you may not have heard before. You may have heard, but perhaps not in the way that you're going to hear it today. I most definitely am learning as we are going through these shows. So what is the focus for today? Before I get into that, if you are joining us today, please take a second or two to just comment. Let us know where in the world you are joining us from. Please share the live stream. You never know who can benefit from it either now or later. I'll ask you another question in a moment. So if you haven't seen the flyer or the show description, today's topic is about the clitoris and its many functions. And there are many, many more than I am sure you even know exist. That is definitely how I felt before preparing for this show today. So a bit of trivia, or if I can ask you to do something, whilst we're going through this show, just take a moment and drop in the comment box, how do you say the word clitoris in your language? Welcome, Simon Pope from Denmark. How do you say clitoris in your local language? In one of my local languages from Ghana, in Chi, you would say Akosia. You see, now I'm tongue-tied in my non-English language. Akosia Akoma. And apparently that is the polite way to say that. I don't know what the derogatory way is to say it. I don't think I want to know, but at least I've said that. So please take a moment and Thank you. Drop down in the comments box, how do you say clitoris in your local language? Welcome, Sister Margaret Aberdeen from East London. Thank you for joining us. So, Queen Najar, I have a question for you. Well, and it's more to comment on what I'm about to say. When I looked up the word clitoris on Google, what is the meaning? One of the first hits that I got, one of the first search results that came up was from a website from Planned Parenthood. Now, some people may know about Planned Parenthood, which I think initially was very big in the States, or still is very big in the States, and has some affiliation and backing with the Gates, and there's a whole story there. But generally, the gist of the explanation of the clitoris, or the meaning there, was that it is not a sexual organ, and it is basically just there to make women feel good. So I read that with some surprise, I may say, because I've also learned other things that it actually does do. So, Queen Najar, how would you respond to the information that I just shared that I found on Google from Planned Parenthood?
Okay, so first of all, Planned Parenthood is not a school of knowledge, nor are they a university. I think the reason why they would put such a underrated version of the meaning of the word, of what the clitoris is because they're more focused on Planned Parenthood. So that's one. The other one is that essentially much of the knowledge that I hold and that I will be telling you comes from our ancestral mothers and our queens, our maitos, our great grandmothers. This is very old traditional African knowledge, and it's linked to our historical background. It is not linked at all to Planned Parenthood, which started in the recent 19 somethings. I'm not sure when it started. So they would not have the history of the clitoris. They wouldn't. They would not have the history of her functions, her many functions, as told to us by our mothers and grandmothers.
Okay.
So that's the answer. What I usually say is that the clitoris is not, we've been told, over and over again, and it's been repeated over and over again that the clitoris is a sexual organ, but it is not a sexual organ in terms of it is just there for sexual pleasure. No, it's far more than that. The clitoris actually is a group of muscles and has many functions, one of which is that the clitoris is the gatekeeper of our wombs. Okay? So imagine a gatekeeper. So the clitoris is the gatekeeper of our wombs. For she guards all that enters and all that leaves the womb area. And the clitoris has more than 36,000 nerve endings.
How many?
The tip of the 36,000.
Okay.
In the tip of the clitoris alone. Now, all these nerve endings there's a reason why there's so many nerve endings. We are beautifully and wonderfully made and created. So
Absolutely.
it's not an accident. And when we look into what you'll learn today may shock many people. And just understand that this is part of Afrocentric education. It is not Eurocentric education.
Thank you very much. I still have the word. I still have 36,000 in my head. That is a lot of nerve endings for a very small organ, and the audience will find out more in a moment. So I've just pulled up this comment about because I've been asking people, how do you say clitoris in your local language? Welcome, Mary Marie. And so
Hi,
in your
Mary.
language, in your language, you don't know if you have a name for the same, but you say kadudu. I don't know if I said that correctly.
Yeah.
You may like to drop. Yes. Oh, awesome. Okay, so that's wonderful. And whilst we're going through those, why am I taking the time to ask you to say that in your local language? You'll probably hear a bit later on, but I can mention it here that there is a lot of body shaming generally. You know, when you look at the way that we refer to our bodies, or yeah, we refer to the bodies of human beings. There's a lot of body shaming, even on the
Everything.
male side. But I would say, and I could be biased because I am a woman, that is worse for the women. We are made to feel that our parts of our body are shameful, are dirty, are smelly. Queen Najjar, feel free to add any other words, but there is a lot that instead of being able to embrace what Mother Nature gave us, it's like, oh no, don't talk about that. The things that are actually that we were born with that have functional purposes. Oh no, close your legs. You know, don't breastfeed in public, but it's okay for people to watch porn and breasts all over the place. You know, so the reason why we need to mention these things openly because they are like, I mean, they say, yeah, they usually say shake what your mama gave you, but you know, we should be proud of what we are given. They are part of our anatomy, and as Queen Najjar was saying that, you know, they all have functions. When we shame our bodies or any part of us, we are telling ourselves that we actually it's a form of self-hate. So we're walking around in these bodies, and it's not necessarily that we call our own parts a name that's derogatory, but other people can say that. And you can imagine if you keep hearing that as a young child, you grow up in this body that, you know, somebody has named that, oh, this is shameful, this is disrespectful, this is dirty. Um, I don't know if Queen Najjar, you've had your own experience of that. So I'm pointing out to the family that you can help change the narrative by there's nothing shameful or disrespectful by saying the word clitoris the same way you would say penis or vagina. They are our natural anatomy. And it's actually quite surprising that on one hand that we have that mentality, whilst on the other hand, we, for the most part, a lot of us would recognize and acknowledge the power of our God by whatever name you call your God. So, yes, God is wonderful and everything, yet somehow the parts that we were created with, they're shameful. Like there's a mismatch there, you know? So, thank you for staying with us. Sorry. I thought I'd lost you. Thank you for staying with us. Before I ask Queen Najjar another question, let us bring onto the platform another of our guests, Sister Yema Susan Mansoure.
Susan.
Unfortunately, her camera is doing its own thing today, but hopefully, Sister Yema, can you hear us?
I can hear you. The line breaking. I can hear you clearly.
Okay, I can hear you. Yeah, if you can hear us clearly, Queen Najjar, can you hear Sister Yema?
Yes, I can hear her. Can she see us? Can she hear?
Yeah, I can see. Yeah.
You can see us. Okay. So apologies, audience. Tech. But Sister Yema is here with us, and it's a pleasure that you join us again from last week. Hopefully, we will be joined by like almost our third musketeer. But welcome to Sister Yema. For those who weren't with us last week, Sister Yema is an anti-female genital mutilation campaigner, a public speaker, and also founder of Purple Rose Health and Wellbeing. So, you know, we are among some good people on this platform. So welcome, Sister Yema. Where you joined us, I'm not sure if you heard what went before, but where you joined us, I was just making the point to the viewers that the way that we seem to live in a society where we naturally practice body shaming. And obviously now we're talking about women's bodies and specifically the clitoris. And I've been inviting viewers as we go along in the discussion to write down in the comments box how they say clitoris in their local language. What's your experience of this idea of body shaming and how people look at, you know, the clitoris or even just saying the word?
So sorry, I mean, I hope you both can hear me, and the audience as well. My camera is not when I find so many times. I honestly not hear you properly, Angela. I can't get the question that you're asking. The line is just breaking. I didn't understand at all.
I see. I'm having a bit of difficulty hearing you, but I don't know if it's me. Queen Ajah, can you hear Sister Yema okay?
She's breaking up a little bit. A little bit.
I see.
I'm hearing some, but not all.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear the words. It's just backing up like lightning.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we can hear you too well. So when you speak, if you can speak slower, that will help. But my question was, what's your experience of, or do you agree that, you know, we live in a society where we basically shame, you know, we shame the parts of our anatomy, and specifically we're talking about the clitoris, you know, what people's responses are to when we speak about these things. I think we may have lost.
We've lost her again.
I think so. But in the meantime,
no.
let's bring.
Oh no.
Unfortunately, let's bring. Yeah. Okay. Maybe she can try that. Thank you, family, for being with us. So, in which case, Queen Ajah, back over to you. And thank you, audience, yeah, for letting us know whether you could hear her. So that's my observation in terms of body shaming, the way that we don't talk kindly about our God-given body parts. What has your experience been of that? And especially given that we're talking about the clitoris.
Well, I find that one of the reasons that we body shame is because of a lack of understanding. We don't understand what the body part is there for. Let me just give an example of maybe the ear. If we did not understand why we have ears, we could probably go into a space where we begin to cut off our ears and shame each other for the size of our ears. You know, you've got big ears, you've got little ears, you've got... As humans, we just are so nasty. You know, everybody has to try to fit into some little kind of funny mold. And where we have reached with the clitoris is that because the functions of the clitoris are not understood, and because, as I described last week, that this is the FGM is a culture which has come to us from the Romans and slavery. Therefore, to 1,500 years later, we're practicing a slavery culture and we don't understand why we're doing it. We don't.
No.
So let me just get right into it while we wait. Okay, let me just get into the other functions of the clitoris. Is that okay?
Please do go ahead. Yes.
Okay. Now, the clitoris has 8 distinct parts, which are a combination of erectile tissue, and erectile means exactly that, tissue which stands, muscle, and nerve endings. Now, these nerves, the 36,000 nerve endings, okay, continuously send signals to the womb, to the uterovaginal plexus, okay. In Eastern knowledge of the body, they call this the sacral chakra, okay? And it's the second most important chakra in the body. But we're not told about this. We're not told about this, okay? But it's a deeply sensitive part of our wombs as women. This is what we have to understand. So all these 36,000 nerve endings at the tip of the clitoris are continuously sending messages to the womb. Messages which range from the temperature outside, so she can regulate her womb temperature, because a woman's eggs need to be a certain temperature to be healthy, to reproduce, to identifying which minerals leave her body through her urine so she can replace them through her food cravings. But there's more, wait. Okay. The average size of the clitoris is 0.3 to 3.5 centimeters long and up to 1 centimeter wide. Okay. It's the same size as your fingertip. Okay. Now, the fingertip has 3,000 touch receptors. 3,000. The clitoris, which is the same size as your fingertip, has 36,000 receptors. Why? Why? You know, one, every 28 days or so, the ovary sends messages to the clitoris indicating that an egg has been released from the ovum and has begun its 2 to 3 day trip down to the fallopian tube. Okay? It's began the journey. Now, what happens? What happens is that the clitoris responds. Electrical activity increases, okay? It's like imagine New Year fireworks. Okay? Now, the heart beats slightly faster. The entire womb temperature rises. This heats oxygen electrodes. The blood vessels widen due to the heated electrodes. And when the vessels widen, blood rushes to the clitoris area. The result is that with all these the result is that the clitoris begins to open. It begins to unfold. It responds and it begins to unfold. Now, If you have seen a picture, what they call, I forget the name. My daughter is the one who's good at this because she's a photographer. But when you take photographs frequently in a time lapse, that's the word. If you take a time lapse of a budding flower, you will see that the flower goes from very small, and it blooms into this beautiful, open bloom, which is open to attract insects and bees and pollinators, right? Now, the same thing happens to women. As soon as the egg leaves, okay, all these messages are sent to the clitoris, and the whole area begins to bloom. It is also a marker that she is fertile.
I was going
it's a
to
marker
say
that she is fertile.
Yeah, no, just following on from what you're saying, what came into my mind was yes, that's why, whether it's necessarily women or animals, but the phrase of being in heat or on heat.
Yep.
So please do continue.
So because there's this animal, I think it's the chimpanzee.
Or the baboon?
I think it's a chimpanzee or the baboon. But what happens is that when the female chimpanzee is on heat, okay, her bottom swells up like a balloon and it turns pink. Pink. This is the chimpanzee. We're not chimpanzees, okay? But what happens is that we open up on the outside like a rose flower. Both the labia majora, which are the outer petals of the clitoris, together with the labia minora, which are the inner petals, they simultaneously open and they increase in size and in length. Now, what is actually happening is that all this also triggers other things. The pH acidic concentration in the vaginal canal changes. And I think any woman who's watching this will say, yes, it does change, okay? The acidic concentration. The motility changes, the fluidity changes, okay? And the ionic concentrations of the vaginal fluids, they also change. Now, what ionic means is that they have more electrical charge. They're charged, like a battery. So your vagina basically becomes hot and fully charged. It's ready to go, like boom, boom, boom. Let's go. So, and if you're a woman, you know what I'm talking about. It's not a lie. Not only that, there are other changes which occur within the body during ovulation. A woman's eyes, they slightly dilate. This is scientifically proven. I'm not lying. This is true. Okay?
But do your own research.
Men say that a woman smells better. Her sweat apparently smells better. I'm not a man. I don't know. But there are men who say that their partner's sweat when she's ovulating smells sweeter. It has also been scientifically proven that she becomes more attractive. Her balance she's more attractive, not only to her partner, but also to other men. And this is the time when her spouse, when she's ovulating naturally, okay, we're not talking about when you're on birth control, we're talking about natural here, okay, not unnatural. We're not talking about birth control. Birth control is chemicals. So we're talking about natural here. So when a woman is naturally ovulating, her spouse or her partner at that time becomes very possessive. That's the time when he starts being jealous. That's the time when he just starts displaying symptoms of, like, hey babe, where you going?
Restlessness?
Yes, he's
Mm-hmm.
responding to her being charged up. Now, the physical sign of the labia minora and labia majora swelling up and opening like a petal. This is what our midwives, our ancestral midwives, and our ancestors and our mitos and our mothers, this is the sign that they would check if a woman wanted to get pregnant. They tell her to come in. And when they check her, they'd see, okay, now, you go today, and today you do the thing, and today you will get pregnant. And they were always right, because they would look, this is a sign. So that is one of the functions of the clitoris.
Wow. And it has, in case people haven't gathered, why the focus this week is on the clitoris, because obviously we're talking about female genital mutilation, and the clitoris is one of the parts, not necessarily all, but one of the parts that is severed, that is gotten rid of in this practice. And so what I'm getting from you, Queen Ajar, is that if this one organ plays such it's like a multifaceted role in reproduction. We haven't even got to reproduction yet, but my mind is already
No.
there because of the many signals that it sends to the womb. And when the ova have to be released and everything that and like that, then naturally, yes, would get to reproduction at some point. So this is to emphasize the point you were making earlier, that it is not only, if at all, but it's not only a sexual organ. That may be one part of its function. And it would seem that's almost the lesser part, because all these other things seem to play a much more important role. That's how I'm reading it. But before we move on, I wondered if you could take this comment, or if you would like to respond to this comment by Simon Pope, referring to the fact that genital cutting started long before the Romans, back when we were all Africans.
Well, let's say that I'm talking about how it has come back into the continent. Okay, at the turn of I don't know, Simon Pope, if you watched last week's the same show, but in it we learned that during the slave trade, during the Roman slave trade, they had a problem with unwanted children. And what they would do is that they would dump them all outside. They'd throw their children away. And they would also throw away the children, especially those that were born of slaves. And we're talking here about mutilation of the sexual organs. We're not talking about circumcision. That's in the context of the biblical context. Okay, we're talking here about mutilation. So this is FGM and the sewing up, okay, of the vagina, where it is closed and sealed shut. Okay, the reason that they did this and the reason why the price of the girls went up is because these girls, when they were sold into slavery, could not get pregnant. They could not be used as sex slaves. They could not get pregnant. They could not get babies. Note, at the time, the Romans, a very aristocratic society, they did not want any mixed births at all. And yet they were a very free society. They would have a lot of sex. They would have a lot of orgies. They'd have a lot of all these things. Okay? And because of the freedom of this society, a lot of the Romans themselves, whether it is the males or the females, they would have sex with their slaves. That's when they came up with the idea. Castrate the males and castrate the females. Cut off the reproductive, that word, reproductive organs. And for 2,000 years, this has continued. Because this started around 60 AD. When the Romans now came into Africa and began buying slaves. So FGM and castration for the males and making them eunuchs, okay? These two are old customs, and they're customs for servitude for life. Servitude for life. You're a servant for life. You're a servant to your Lord and Master forever. 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 Until the day you die. You will not have children. That is what FGM is, and that is what castration is.
Pretty much, yeah. So sorry, so Simon Pope has just said that, okay, he sees where you're coming from. So FGM, female genital mutilation, and castration are the same thing, because you are removing either
the
partially or wholly the reproductive organs. Okay.
Yes.
Great. That was a great, that's great, because anybody like Simon who didn't watch last week, this is something that we covered. And the fact that, I'll just re-emphasize what Queen Najah said last week, the fact that we may believe that it is originally, or it was originally, part of our African culture. But as we learned last week, that it was not. It was something that was inherited, in the, if that's even the right word, but passed down, passed on to us to continue practicing. And Queen Najah, do you want to just say quickly why that was passed to us as something that we should continue practicing, as in on the African continent?
Because most of the time when I hear this, I hear two things. I hear it raises the price of the girls. That's one. It raises the price of the girls. Number two, it says it controls them for sex. Yes, it does. It controls them because they cannot reproduce. So it does. They cannot have sex. And a lot of time, I also hear this word, but I prefer to leave this to Sister Mariam, where they say that the girls are castrated at a young age, and then they're later on, when they're married, they're opened up. They're opened up so that they can receive the penis and so that they can give birth. But there's a problem with that. There's a very big problem in that, because you have to go back to the first reason for this mutilation. When you castrate a man, you cannot uncastrate him. The same is true for FGM. Once you've sewn shut or burnt or razored off this particular muscle, it's done. Once you've cut off your ear, it's done. You know, you can stick in another ear, but it's not your ear. Once you've cut off the tip of your tongue, it's done.
Can't talk.
You cannot go back and say, oh, now we want you to be able to talk, so now we're going to operate on you and give you another ear, another appendage. No, it's done. And this is what people do not understand. So they keep talking about we castrate our girls, we cut off their clitoris so that they do not have sex, not understanding that this is permanent as much as male castration is permanent.
And sorry, Queen, I don't know if you had finished there, but it's
I had.
It's we talk about it as a harmful effect, a barbaric effect. And isn't it interesting that right at the beginning of the show, I was telling you where I had found one kind of definition or meaning or function for the clitoris that had come from Planned Parenthood. And isn't it? Nothing is by coincidence. This very practice that we are talking about is actually a kind of Planned Parenthood, as in preventing reproduction, either because I'll let you deal with that a bit later, but either because, let's just say, the signals are not being, you've lost the antenna that was sending the signals to the womb to prepare, to go through the whole reproductive process, or a girl that has been cut, or even maybe sometimes the women who've been cut, they've bled to death, or they have they have dialed whilst trying to give birth. They all mean the same thing: no babies. Unless somehow, a baby survives, but the mother doesn't. So, yeah, it just became obvious to me now that, oh, actually, that it all fits part of the agenda. Some call it birth control, this line that we are fed that we must, that the world is overpopulated and we must reduce the population. The African continent, the last time I checked, and I won't quote because I don't have the statistics, but the last time I checked, every race, their birth statistics, their birth rate was decreasing. We, the African people, our birth rate was the only one that I think was on par, like we were breaking even. So there is nothing like that, we are overpopulated, And it's just when we look at these things, then we really, really understand the long-term effects not only to these poor individuals who are subjected to this just cruel, I would say it's cruel, I'll call it cruel, barbaric practice. And I call it that because for those who didn't watch last week, and like me, I'm learning, this practice is undergone without giving the girls who can be as young as 3, 5, 6, between that age and 12, without giving them anesthesia.
Yeah.
If that's not cruel, I really don't know what is, without sounding judgmental. I have 2 sons. They had been circumcised and they were given something to numb the area before they were circumcised. It was carried out in a doctor's surgery, some kind of medical, practice. But what I'm hearing is that this is not the experience of our girls who are undergoing this procedure, if I can call it that, that apparently we have been made to believe that it's cultural or it's religious. There's probably another one that I can't remember right now. But the point is, it's none of those things. And the third one that one of our panelists mentioned last week is that there's no it's done without there being any medical grounds for doing so. So we're really, hopefully in the remaining 2 episodes that we have, and this is a message for the men, because, we want to be balanced. We want to see the whole and other perspectives. So, if you are a man who has maybe daughters who have undergone FGM, female genital mutilation, or your wife, you got married to somebody and you insisted on being married to a woman who had undergone the practice, perhaps you can get in touch. You can send a message to the USA message box. And so maybe there's a perspective that we are not hearing as to the benefits, the rationale of this practice. But at the moment, it's one-sided. It seems to be something that is excruciatingly painful and not necessary and without foundation. But I am open to challenge. So please do drop a message in the USA message box on Facebook, unless or if you're willing, leave a comment in the comments and we will look at that later. So Queen Najah, I'm looking at the time and there's a lot more that we want to share with. Yes, okay. So let's take this comment, which is true. We know this. That Simon Purvis mentioned, yeah, there are 2 forms. So go ahead.
I will come to your. Okay, let me respond to Simon Pope first, and then I will continue with why the clitoris is so
instrumental,
important. So yes, there are two forms. One, you just cut off the tip, or you burn it off, whichever it is. And when it's cut off, Simon, it's cut off with a razor blade. Now, I've just said that this little piece, which is the size of your finger, has 36,000 nerve endings. Your finger has 3,000 nerve endings in the same space. And the question bodes, why? Why would God make this area have so many nerve endings? Why? What is it for? Okay, so let me just explain, because there's more. You see, infibulation means that you cut off the labia minora and the labia majora. But what happens when this signaling comes from the womb and the labia majora and the labia minora increase in size? What else happens? In the womb, which we do not see, we don't see this, but it's in the womb, it's down there, okay? So this is all internal. What happens is that the vaginal cavity tents. It's called vaginal tenting. Now, what is a tent? We all know what a tent is. It's a little piece of cloth, and you can, to stay in it, it's a shelter, you prod it up with sticks, and then you have this space.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is that the vagina tents. Why does it tent? You know, the body is very, very clever. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
The reason that it tents is because it allows semen to decoagulate and capacitate. Now, these are big words. What they really mean is that sometimes semen is very thick,
Mm-hmm.
and the sperm needs to remove itself from all that. And then, and this is the important thing, it needs to undergo a chemical change which enables them to penetrate and fertilize an ovum. Rapid transport directly into the fallopian tubes just permits unfertilizable sperm to meet the ovum. Do you get that? So you can have sex and have sex and have sex, but if the womb, if the vagina has not tented, what happens is that the sperm is unfertilizable. But
So it's pointless.
so it's pointless. You're just having sex for the sake of having sex.
I guess some may say that that's another form of birth control, but it comes at a very costly price.
Yes, but you see, the cutting off of the clitoris was a form of birth control.
Yes, as we are
So this
learning
is how
today.
it continues, because these are the functions of the clitoris on the inside. So without that ballooning, without the vaginal tenting, okay, the sperm rush straight up to the fallopian tubes. So that Miss Egg is sitting over there waiting, and along comes all these sperms, all 10,000 of them, but they're all unfertilizable because they haven't waited.
Yeah.
There's no space for them to wait. There's no tent. A tent is a shelter. A tent is a space. A tent means a temporary space, a temporary area. Whenever we have tents, the word tent itself, even in the Bible, means a temporary space, a temporary shelter. So our wombs are so clever. They have this mechanism. And the clitoris is the one which says, okay, girl, let's go here. Let's do the widening, the stretching, the swelling, okay? And let's create a space, a holding bay, where when the sperm comes in, it will wait a little bit, because remember, sperm can stay in that vaginal space for up to 5 days.
Yeah.
Up to how many days? And then they go up and they fertilize. So that's another reason why the clitoris is very important for fertilization.
Yes, unfortunately, we don't have Sister Mariam here to talk about, and maybe she can do that next week, but to talk about those who have managed to birth after after undergoing female genital mutilation, and some of the different experiences, because it's not necessarily that it's impossible, but I think there are some really, I don't want to say horrific, but very painful stories.
They are horrific.
To be honest, they are horrific.
Queen Asante, they are very horrific. How much time do we have? 2 minutes?
We have about 5 minutes. Just under. A couple of minutes. Can you do it? Introduce it, and we'll have to continue next week.
Okay, let me introduce it this way. I want to talk about scar tissue.
Yes, I was thinking about that. Yes, but go ahead, please.
Scar tissue is not just ugly, okay? You've all cut yourselves. And what you get after you cut yourself is something which is called scar tissue. Scar tissue is dense. It's dense and it's fibrous. We all know what fibrous means. Think of your ginger root or something which has a lot of thick fiber in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So scar tissue is dense, fibrous tissue that forms when normal tissue is destroyed by disease or by injury or surgery. It is abnormal. So scar tissue forms in the vaginal area after FGM. When the clitoris and when the labia minora and the labia majora are cut and discarded, the pelvic floor muscle become filled with fibrous scar, which is as hard as wood. It is inflexible.
Wow.
When the clitoris is cut and when the labia are sewn together, the door to the womb is closed.
Mm.
Now I'm going to ask you to think, all of you to think about an elevator. You know that machine called an elevator, a lift?
A lift? Yeah.
They're essential to our lives, aren't they? I mean, if you have a building which is like 10 stories high, I like to liken the elevator to the womb canal for now, okay? Very quickly. We all know the function and how the doors open and close and how the lift moves up and down floors. This is the same thing that happens during birth. The clitoris is the elevator button. You know the one that you press like this? And when you press the elevator button, what happens is that if you're on the ground floor and the elevator is on the top floor, when you press the elevator button,
Hello, Queen Ajal. Can everybody hear Queen Ajal? Is it just me that's lost her? If you can hear me, please let me know if you can hear her.
we're back. So, woo. Okay.
Okay, I think, okay, I wasn't sure if I lost you, or can you just finish the last thought that you were saying? Because I'm not sure if we all got everything between us. Just finish the last.
So what that during the birth process, imagine you are in a building and you are on the ground floor and you have some humans on the 50th floor, and they need to come from the 50th floor to the ground floor safely. You press the button on the ground floor. On the top floor, the elevator doors shut. And this is what happens in the womb during birth. There's a signal which is sent from the womb to the clitoris, telling the clitoris, hey, I'm done with this pregnancy. Now you need to open the gates. You need to open what? The gates. Now the elevator shaft, you can see all the systems, the gears, the pulleys, everything, which are gently lowering the humans in the lift gently, slowly down to the ground floor. And when they reach the ground floor, what happens? The lift doors open. Imagine if something went wrong with the signaling, and though that lift crashed to the bottom, and then you couldn't open the lift doors. Or even if you open the lift doors, imagine the carnage that you will find inside that lift. This is what happens when we close the womb. The baby cannot get out.
Wow.
The muscles have been sewn shut. The scar tissue does not soften. It is fibrous, hard tissue. So the girl may be pushing, the womb is already pushing. We know this, okay? But what's happening? The elevator doors are shut. And this is why many of our girls end up with what is called fistula. Because that baby keeps punching at those doors and punches through to the bladder and creates a hole in the bladder. Now,
Wow.
and I know this is something which I learned, that there are many men who refuse their wives to have cesarean section because they say that it is not a normal birth. But how do they expect their wives to have a normal birth when the doors have been shut? So what happens is that the babies die or they get ripped out. Because the baby gonna come out. Let me tell you, contractions continue and the pushing continues until either the baby comes out or the mother dies. That is a function of the womb during birth. The only time that those contractions will stop is if either the baby is out or the mother. The baby comes out or the mother dies. The contractions will continue and continue because the womb is just pushing and pushing and pushing the baby out. So there are so many scenes. There's so many nasty scenes. So Angela, what I want to say is this: it's not a
Yeah.
beautiful scene, and I don't mind saying that it is an extremely ugly scene when it comes to birthing of a woman who has undergone FGM. It is not pretty. It is not pretty at all because she has no the doors are shut.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The baby's literally fighting to get out, not even.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That we will definitely will continue with next week. Um, Apologies. Well, it's a shame that through one issue or another, we weren't able to have other panelists on this week, but they will be back next week. Sister Yema, Susan Mansoure, and Sister Mariam Sheikh will be back with us next week. I just mentioned this last comment that painful awareness about the clitoris, the gatekeeper to our womb, an important organ of our physical body. And if you haven't yet had the chance and you now remember, or to ask somebody, how do you say clitoris in your language? Do drop that in the comments. Next week, we'll be back with our other panelists. And I just repeat the invitation to our men. If any of you are willing to speak to us about your families, daughters, wives who have undergone female genital mutilation, please do send us a message. Either to, actually, it's best if you send the message to Power to Our Mothers Foundation. We can find that quickly, or drop a comment in the comments box. So Queen Najah, thank you so much for enlightening us today. I'm always learning on this platform. And thank you all, Sister Margaret, Brother Simon Pope, Janice, Carl, there are Mary Marie, a lot of you, all of you for signing in today from your parts of the world. Join us at the same time next week, 1 p.m. GMT. Do find out what time that is in your country. That's 1 o'clock in the UK and in Ghana. I can say that much. So thanks for your time. Please take a minute and share the broadcast. You never know who you can help to learn something else. And regardless of the rationale behind this practice, you have just heard some of the consequences for girls, young women who have to undergo this practice. So please let that inform you. Think about it. Think about what you've heard here today, and why this should all matter to us. Thank you again for tuning in. Join us again next week. And the last reminder is that the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence against women does commence on 25th November. So this is kind of done with that in mind. And please do keep engaging and sharing your comments and your questions. We will see you next week. I'm Angela Asante Amal, and I'm leaving you with Queen Najah until next week. See you.